Hey there, how you doing? Surely no one has had as many compilation albums released as Elvis, and I have many happy memories growing up listening to the Elvis 40 Greatest album. I didn't initially own the album, I had to borrow it from a friend and record it onto cassette, and we had one of those little portable cassette recorders with a condenser microphone. That's how we recorded music back in those days. It was okay, but you had to be very quiet when you were recording to make sure that no extraneous noise found its way onto the tape. Anyway, I was sitting there very quietly enjoying the music, trying not to make a sound, and suddenly my mother decided to shout up the stairs to tell me what was for dinner, and I was kind of cursing inside, but didn't do anything or didn't say anything, just stayed very quiet. But anyway, later on, when I listened back to my recording, very faintly in the background I could hear this sausage, egg and chips in the background. Now, in Japan too, they have released many compilation albums over the years, beginning as early as 1965, and in fact, from that point until today, basically, it's been possible to buy Japan-only compilations at any point in time. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through the records, the LPs that were available from that first one in 1965 right through until the last one that was released, that was available until the CD era. Okay, so the first compilation that came out in Japan, Japan-only compilation, was this one here from 1965. It's called Elvis's Golden Story Volume 1. And you can see the obi is quite an unusual design. It's quite thin, and it has this star shape at the top here, which actually gives you the reason why this record was released. It says it's to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Elvis's debut. So this came out at the end of 1965. So it's more like a 10th anniversary of the debut of Heartbreak Hotel than Elvis's debut itself. Now, if we go onto the inside cover, you can see there's a reproduction of Elvis's signature. It's not very well done, unfortunately, but there it is. And on the right side, there is a portrait. Now, you can actually see that there is a calendar here, and some of the dates are circled. Some of the more important dates are circled. For example, February the 1st is circled. That is, according to the calendar, the date that filming began for Loving You in 1957. March the 24th is also circled, and this is the day that Elvis joined the army in 1958, and so on. So you can see that there is actually a booklet integrated or stapled into the cover. Now on the left hand side, there's actually a lot of personal data, sort of fact file if you like. Now most of this is fairly standard stuff that everybody knows. For example, where Elvis was born, when he was born, and it gives his nickname as the Chief. I don't know how true that was. Parents' names, religion, and it also gives other information such as he doesn't drink alcohol, and the bad habits he's got, chewing his nails. And further down it gives other information. It even gives his army number, 5331071, and it says he has 44 gold records at the last count, and it even gives 2 fan club addresses, one in Minneapolis for the American fan club and one in Tokyo for the Japanese fan club. Over on the right side here, you can see the track listing. This is all in Japanese. Now this album is actually in reprocessed stereo, and volume 1, this album here, focuses entirely on the 1950s tracks, and it starts with his first hit, Heartbreak Hotel, and goes through to I Need Your Love Tonight. The only song which is not a hit single is Trouble from the movie King Creole, of course. So on the inside we have a nice photo spread as well as some Japanese liner notes. You can see at the top here some early photographs, Elvis as a child and as a young man, and this picture here is supposedly a photograph of Lauderdale Courts and this is a picture of Audubon Drive and his bedroom there. On the right we have some stage shots. This shot, I like this photo here. You can see DJ and Bill on stage, presumably Scotty on the far side, and here's Elvis waiting in the wings. So for some reason the rest of the band went on first. And this shot down here I also like very much. You can see Elvis jumping around with the fans. You can also see several police officers standing around as well. Everybody looks like they're having a really good time. Turn over and you have a chronology from 1935 to 1961, March 1961, where the booklet tells us that he went to Hawaii to film Blue Hawaii on March the 25th. That's the last entry. On the opposite side there is a list here of Elvis's hit songs. This is a singles catalogue basically, and it has the first one as Heartbreak Hotel and the last one is Easy Question. They all have the Japanese catalogue numbers except I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, because that one had been deleted in Japan at that time. Over on the right side you have Elvis's Billboard #1 hits, 18 at the time, and it lists Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel separately. Okay, on the next page we have liner notes about each of the songs in Japanese, and on the right side in this square here you have a list of Elvis's million sellers, American million sellers and worldwide million sellers, and a short list of half-million sellers, and then a list of what it says are Elvis's hit albums. And finally you have the lyrics to all the songs in English. There's the back cover with the song titles in Japanese. So that was volume 1. Volume 2 was released at the same time in this cover here. This too will have had a star-shaped obi when it was released, but it's long gone. Same idea with the gatefold cover and the facsimile of Elvis's signature portrait on the inside with the calendar for the second half of 1966. Remember, these were released at the end of 1965. And again, there are some dates here. So for example, August the 14th is circled, and that is the day that Gladys died in 1958. Turn to the inside. This information here is the same factual information that was presented in the first volume, and this is the track listing over here. So this second volume focuses on the 1960s. So it starts with Stuck on You and It's Now or Never. Then we have a single which came out in Japan with GI Blues, Surrender, and then another Japanese hit, Blue Hawaii, Follow That Dream from the EP, and then Return to Sender, Devil in Disguise, Bossa Nova Baby, Kissing Cousins, Viva Las Vegas, and another hit in Japan, Do the Clam. And on the inside again we have some more photographs. This is Elvis arriving in Germany and the fans greeting him, and here Elvis is in Germany reading the first letter handed to him, and on the right side you can see fans welcoming Elvis home, and here he is getting his haircut before entering the army. On this side we have the same chronology as in volume 1. On the right side is a list of his movies up to Tickle Me. So there were 18 movies at that point. All of these were screened in Japan, and the titles are all different in Japanese. Some of them are just translated straight into Japanese, other ones have completely different titles. So for example, Kid Galahad, the translation of the Japanese title translates as Love's KO Punch in English. And the World's Fair, it happened at the World's Fair, the title translates into English as a young parade, presumably because not too many people knew about the World's Fair at that time in Japan. On the next page you have more liner notes for each song, and on the right side it's the same lists again with the million sellers, half-million sellers, and the hit albums, and then you have the lyrics. On the back, once again, all the song titles printed in Japanese. As you can see, this is on the Victor label, but both volumes were on the black Victor label. This is a slightly later pressing. Now you can see it's on the RCA label, and there's just one difference on the inside. and you can see the calendar has gone. The portrait is still there, the colour picture is still there, but the calendar has disappeared because it was no longer 1966. Now this particular copy is still on the Victor label. Now you might think this is someone mixing and matching, but in actual fact I don't think that's true. What's probably happened is they still had some Victor records left when the albums had to come out on the RCA label in 1969, and they just matched, the record company just matched the cover, the new cover, with the old record. This one is an RCA reissue of the first volume. You can see the RCA logo at the top there. This one still does have its obi, and you can see that the shape is still the same, with a thin strip and then a star at the top, although the text has changed now. It just says Golden Best Album. There's no reference to the 10th anniversary. And just like Volume 2, the RCA copy of Volume 1 has a colour picture, but without the calendar. And there's just one thing to show you at the back, because this will change. On the inside back cover, you can see that it has the Nipper logo here in the middle, and that's been the case for all copies that I've shown you so far. And this one is on the RCA orange label, as you can see, and the manufacturer is still Victor Company of Japan, and you can see that there is, or you might be able to see, that there's a groove near the outside of the orange label, so this shows you it's one of the first orange label pressings. This is another version of Volume 1, just one thing to show you here, and that's on the inside back cover. You can see here that the Nipper logo has gone. Otherwise this is the same as the one I just showed you. And this is yet another copy of Golden Story Volume 1. This is actually one of the very last ones to be released. And again, there's just one thing to show you at the back. Now you can see that it has an RCA logo on the inside back cover. The record itself is still on the RCA orange label, but the manufacturer has changed to Victor Musical Industries. So this would have been manufactured in 1972. So it was one of the very last copies of this album to be released. Now in 1968 they decided to put both those albums, Golden Story Volumes 1 and Volume 2, into one double LP set, and they called it The Great Hits of Elvis. Now if you look here on the cover, you might be able to make out like a darker blue square on the cover there. This originally had the Victor logo, the Nipper logo. So this LP initially came out on Victor, had a Victor cover, but this one you can see has an RCA obi. So this is a slightly later one. In actual fact, the records are still Victor, so these must have been some of the leftover Victor records that they paired up with the sleeve. And the price you can see here is 3,000 yen. So if you bought the double album, you could get all 24 songs for 3,000 yen. If you bought the two single albums, it would have cost 4,000 yen. So you would have saved some money, but the packaging is not quite as lavish on this double album. So turning to the inside cover, the first thing you see is the track listings in English and Japanese text. The back side of the obi has advertisements for this album and two others in the same series, The Great Hits of Paul Anka and Neil Sedaka. And on the right side of the cover you have a list of million selling singles. And it doesn't end there, because there are 4 pages stuck into the gatefold cover. And on the left side you get Japanese notes about each of the songs, and on the right side you get a discography, Japanese LP discography. So one or two of the covers are slightly different to other countries. The Christmas album is different to anywhere else, and Girl Happy, which I've shown in a previous video or two, This is also different. There are minor differences to one or two other covers, but basically they're all the same as the US releases. And the back cover contains some nice shots from the mid-1960s. And once again, 1950s songs appear on disc 1, all in electronically reprocessed stereo, and the 1960s songs appear on disc 2. So that album, The Great Hits of Elvis, was released in 1968, and it was available until the 1970s, and then it was basically taken over by this album here called Best 24, which you can see has a more up-to-date cover with an early 70s picture of Elvis. Now, initially this was released with an obi. There are two different designs. One has like a red, white and blue design, which is fairly standard for RCA releases at the time, and there's another one which is sort of a purple, and I forget now, but I'll put a picture up on the screen. Now this particular version here actually was a later pressing, and it came with what's known as a poster obi. And if you look here, this is the Japanese information here with the tracks, and the Japanese title Best 24 Deluxe. On the English cover, on the front cover, it says Best 24. In fact, on the records, it has a different title again, The Greatest Hits of Elvis Presley. Now, what this is here, it's known as a poster obi. I can show you that. So it folds out like that to one big picture of Elvis at the Aloha concert, and then at the bottom is the Japanese information. And the way that works is it folds right around. We put the cover on the inside, and then the Japanese information comes at the top there, like so. Now, they only did this with 2 records. They only released 2 albums with these poster obis. This one here, and the other one was recorded live on stage in Memphis. So the Memphis album came out in 1974. This one must have been 1973 or later because of the Aloha picture. I'm not actually sure when this one came out, but it's probably the last version of this album. As you can see, it's still on the RCA label. On the inside, track listings on the left side at the top, Japanese liner notes here. And then there's just a 12-inch by 12-inch insert here. And on the second side it has lyrics in English. So you have all the lyrics to the songs. And once again you have the same old fact file that was presented in the 1965 compilation. And on the back, again, you have all the tracks in Japanese. So basically what they've done is they've updated the cover, but they haven't really updated the contents. Still, you have the same 1250s tracks on disc 1 and the same 60s tracks up to Do the Clam on disc 2. Now, after the Aloha TV special, they produced an album, a double album called Elvis Gold 30, and this is the booklet for that double album. What they did with this album is they revamped the contents as well as the cover. So they added a lot of tracks going all the way up to Fool in 1973, and on the screen I'll put a list of songs that they added as well as a list of tracks that they took away. And there's a really nice booklet that came with the album, which we're looking at now. A lot of photographs. Most of these are fairly well known, I think. And then a chronology in the middle. More pictures on the inside. This picture shows Elvis receiving a gold record from a well-known Japanese music writer. Well, she's well known over here anyway. She's an old woman now, actually. And over the next few pages we have a list of Elvis's movies in Japanese, and in between there's a picture of Elvis at the Aloha show, And this is the second part of the movies. It goes all the way up to Elvis on tour, the last one. And liner notes about each song, and track listing down here on the next 4 pages. And you can probably guess at the back, all the lyrics are in English, and then there's a back cover with a great photograph from the TV special. So this was released initially in 1973, and then they reissued it with a different cover. I'll put a picture of that on the screen. But this one apparently wasn't very popular, so they replaced that cover with the original front cover. Now this album was released in 1976. It's called Special 24, and it's part of a series, 2 albums for 3,600 yen. And for example, David Bowie had a release in this series, and Jose Feliciano, etc. And this album was still available at the start of the CD era in 1985, so I don't know exactly when it was deleted, but it was certainly still available in 85. So Special 24 refers to the number of tracks, and in fact all 24 of these tracks were available on the Gold 30 album. So the albums may have been both available at the same time, in which case you could get this one with fewer tracks for a little bit less money and a slightly less impressive booklet, or you could get Gold 30, get more music and a nicer booklet. Now you can see here it says Elvis 20 years, so that's going from 1956 to 1976. In the booklet we just looked at, it said Elvis 19 years, so that particular copy of Gold 30 dates back to 1975, although the original came out in 73. More notes on each song, and you can see it follows the same format with the pictures and track listing underneath the pictures. And at the end you get the English lyrics, the final ones being on the inside cover itself. And there you go, on the back cover. For once they've put the songs in English rather than in Japanese. And like most of the albums we've looked at here, this one is on the RCA orange label. This album is actually very hard to find in really clean condition. I'm talking about the cover. These covers often turn up fairly badly stained, but this one's actually quite a nice copy. So there you go. I think that covers basically all the Japan-only compilation albums that were released between 1965 and 1976. As ever, thanks for watching and take care.